Welcome to Look, Listen, Laugh. Now, as a comedian, I love watching my guest on stage take seemingly small ideas and turn them into comedy gold on a nightly basis. We're going to sit down and discuss his favorite film, book, and album. So sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Ross Noble. Well, Ross, I'm having deja vu here. This feels like
it's good to be back.
Yeah, it's good to chat with you again.
It's all my fault, but at least we're warmed up.
Yeah,
we should tell everyone that.
Well, look,
we've been recording for half an hour.
We've been recording for half an hour here, and
I leant on the microphone and it was off.
And it was off. So there was great stuff that was in there that you were talking about.
Yeah.
But it's going to be weird if we try and recreate that again.
Let's not recreate it.
It's a past moment.
But it's good though, because I often think, you spend a conversation, it takes you a good 20 minutes, half an hour to get up to speed.
Yeah, it does.
You start chatting about important things.
Yeah.
And it was, we were talking about, I had literally, I'd solved the problems in the Middle East. You had.
I was fascinated.
You just do this, you do that, and you do that.
And the way that you just brought it all back around to also solving the Ukraine problem too.
Exactly.
It was like...
Exactly.
Well, it's a moment that's gone in time.
And then we didn't record it. You can't remember what I said. I got distracted.
Well, take two.
So there we go.
You've just come straight from a recording with the project in New Zealand.
Project New Zealand, that's a thing.
Yeah.
It's mad. It's like a sort of... it's weird, that show, because you've got sort of... we should say it for people that don't know, because of people around the world aren't watching this. So the project is a sort of... It's a kind of a hybrid, isn't it? It's sort of a news... It's a sort of news, current affairs with a comedy, entertainment. It's a magazine show. It's like a morning show where they don't sell you all the crap in between.
You don't get all the Demtel products.
It's a lot punchier, and they're not interested in sort of appealing to that demographic. It's a younger thing.
Because it used to be the late night shows that like Rove was on, and then before that it was like Steve Vizard, and back in the day Don Lane. And that's where any international musicians or comedians or actors or whoever would go on those shows, and that's kind of replaced that now, where it's more of a panel show interview.
But also as well, this has replaced those shows.
Yeah,
and I think it's great. The fact that you would watch, like when YouTube first started, and you would watch interviews with people that you really liked. And I always
old Letterman interviews.
Exactly. And you would go through and you'd like pick somebody and go, oh yeah, I'll watch all their interviews. And then you watch them on chat shows all around the world, and they do exactly the same bits all the time. And you watch it, and you sort of go, you only ever got like 7 minutes, 10 minutes of that person. Whereas now you actually get long form conversation,
and it can go in a direction that you weren't expecting. And whereas with those, a lot of the times it's pre-planned what you're going to talk about.
Exactly.
It's all, and like you say, it's the same. Like, I remember I used to, when I was younger, tour manage an American comedian magician, the amazing Jonathan.
Oh yes,
and so he was on the midday show out here, and Paul Hogan was on the midday show, and he had just been on Letterman, and I remember he was wearing this cream-coloured suit, and we're backstage. This was just before Jonathan was about to go on, and we're watching him. And then they said, let's show you were just on Letterman, and they cut to a clip of him on Letterman. Oh, no. He's wearing the same cream-coloured suit, but then talking about the same stuff that they're talking. So it was kind of this kind of weird parallel universe that you're looking into. The exact same clothes, exact same information. And
well, when I met my wife, what is it now? 2 days ago. So.
You met your wife 2 days
ago? 2 days
ago.
It's
you guys have hit it off big
whirlwind
time.
romance.
Wow.
2 days ago was exactly 23 years since we met.
Right.
And when we first met, she had never seen any comedy, never seen any live comedy. She didn't know anything about the stand-ups. She was into music. She had no interest in the world of stand-up, hadn't looked into it. The only live comedy show she had ever seen was The Amazing Jonathan.
Oh, really?
It was the only show. So maybe...
Wow.
Yeah, maybe you were in the wings.
At one of those shows.
Yeah.
Did she like the show?
She did, yeah. Well, it was funny because I just said, what have you've never been to a live comedy show? And she went, yeah, I've been to. I said, how is it? Like one? I went, who's it? And she went, oh, he was like the marvelous something. He was like, I don't know,
the
like
marvelous Jonathan,
like Christopher or something.
The whimsical Stephen.
And I went, what did you do? She went, he's like a magician. I went, the amazing Jonathan. That's him.
Yeah.
So that was her entire live comedy when we met.
Well, that's a good. I feel a kinship with you now because that was the first live show I ever saw.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, my dad took me when I was 12 years old.
Oh,
and
right,
I'm underage going into this show, and it was his first show he ever did in Sydney, and I was blown away. For me, that was like one of those epiphany moments. That's what I want to do when I grow up.
Yeah, I had that.
Yeah.
I had that when I was 14, and I won some tickets to see. It was a bunch of shows. There's a guy called a bunch of comedians on the same show. There was a guy called Simon Fanshawe. There was a guy called Chris Lynham. Who do you ever see Chris Lynham? He's this kind of like really wiry guy, this mad guy, and he had hair like mine, but it was like up in the air, like it was gelled up like that high.
Yeah.
And he would do his acting. He was like sort of a crazy physical clown. And he would finish his act. He was stripped completely naked. He'd shove a firework up his ass, light it, and sing "There's no business like your business." And, so there was him.
It was that moment that you went, "That's what I want to do when I grow up."
There's a guy called Frank Sidebottom, who was the guy with the papier-mâché head. Have you?
Hello there, I'm Frank Sidebottom.
Oh no, I haven't.
No, you got to look up Frank Sidebottom. There's a documentary about him. Which is watch the documentary, and then there was them, and then there was Joe Brand was on, and then the host of the show was Jack D.
Oh, Jack D, yeah.
And Jack D, and it was before he'd gone big. It was he was sort of it's before his Channel 4 show, and he came out, and he had the suit on, and I was sat there 14. And we didn't know who we were going to see.
Yeah.
And he just came out and he had that sort of snarly, snide thing, deadpan.
Yeah.
And like, all the people on telly were like, hey there, it's great to be here.
You're looking good.
Yeah, this sort of like, and this guy walks out and at first you sort of think, oh, it's because at the time nobody wore a suit on stage.
Right.
So, he was the suit guy. That was, the grumpy thing was kind of a separate issue,
Yeah.
And it was, and he came out with this really smart suit and a tie on, and he looked at me, he just went, and straight away in my head, I just thought, oh, you're going to be like one of these guys on TV that's like super slick and all the rest of it. And he came out and he just, he started doing these things, and I just like, for a 14-year-old to go, oh, there's a comedian on stage who just doesn't. He's not going, hey, please.
He's not doing a song and dance.
Yeah. And he did this thing where he got his glass of water, and he put it, and he had a stool. It was like this. It had a cushion on it, and he put a glass of water on the side of the stool, so it wasn't in the center. It was just sort of like off to the side, slightly leaning, and he just went, a lot of you looking at that thinking that could fall off at any point, couldn't it? But yeah, it's going to annoy that, isn't it? Anyway, and then he went to carry on, and then he did this thing about how he said, that's your Land of the Giants, the tiny little. There's these tiny people in this, in the Land of the Giants.
Yeah.
And he talked about how they would always fall into like a cup of tea or whatever, and they'd be swimming around. And he talked about how the tiny people from Land of the Giants were in this mug, and that could fall at any moment.
Yeah.
He's just going, anyone with OCD, he's like, I just remember, like he was baiting the crowd.
Yeah,
he was basically going like, I'm so comfortable. I'm happy for you to feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And just it was that thing of like just this, and he turned his back on the audience at one point.
That kind of dismissiveness of
yeah. And then at the end, he walks back on. And he sort of, he goes, right, I'm going now. He's like, good night. And he just went like that, just smashed the glass on the floor. And and I had that moment of going, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And then sort of years later, when I finally got to to work with him. And I told him, I said, the first comic I ever saw, and I went, that's what I want to do. And he went, he had exactly the same thing with Jeremy Hardy. Right. And he'd seen Jeremy Hardy, he went, that's what I want to do. And then subsequently...
Jeremy Hardy, he saw Chaplin. And
right the way through. And then, and obviously, now sometimes when you get young comics come along and they say, I came to and I went, that's what I want to do. I go, that's what I did to Jack Dean. Jack Dean did that to Jeremy Hardy.
But to have that when you're so impressionable at that age too, and to have that kind of response. For me, it was like I was obsessed. I tried to absorb every. This is back in the day, you had to go and rent a videotape, right?
But that's the mad thing is that now, and that's why young comics, the young comics coming through. And I hate those people that are just kind of like, it's not as good. And the new acts coming through, the standard is so much better.
It's such a reference pool to learn.
Because exactly right. You used to have to, I was sending off for there used to be an actual bookshop in London. When I first moved to London, there was a place called the Lighter Side, and it sold nothing but comedy books.
Oh, wow.
And you could go down there and you could buy, comedians' autobiographies and books on writing, comedy, and all that sort of stuff.
What a great reference.
It was incredible. And you go down there, and I remember there was one, the comedy writing workbook by Jean Perret. He was he used to write jokes for Bob Hope and stuff.
I had that, but I remember reading that.
Yeah.
And this was like back in the 90s. I remember.
Yes,
reading. There was one joke in there. I remember he said, and I wrote this joke for Bob Hope, and it was. He goes, I'm here at the penguins. Look at these penguins. They got wings and they can't fly. I know how they feel. I have golf clubs. I just remember that joke just always standing out in my mind and Phyllis Diller he would write
for.
That's
right. Yeah.
Wow, I haven't thought about that book in like 20
and it was all charts and think of 10 things about, it was if you're playing a sand and gravel convention.
Did you find it? Did that ever help in any way? Because I remember reading one part where it said, look at yourself in the mirror, write down 10 things about yourself. And I got like halfway, I'm like, I don't know, I can't do this. This isn't working.
But you know what was good about that? It just started to make you think about. I think make you think about how everyone's got their own. Everyone's got their own voice, but and everyone's got their own process.
Yes.
And but weirdly, I think probably back in his day, he would sit down and he'd make a chart and then write it out.
And it was like a graph, and if it gets to point A and point B, it meets
And I think it just sort of, it gets to the point where that might have worked, back in the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah.
And then as time goes on, it just gets to the point where it's like, here's a subject, bang, there it is.
Yes.
And it goes through the process.
Yeah.
But like you say, you used to have to go down to the bookshop. You had to go. You had to get tapes in from America, and in Britain, I don't know if it's the same here, but you had to have an NTSC player.
Yeah.
Because we were on the PAL, so you had to buy an American player. For their tapes to watch. Whereas now the young comics come along,
click,
kids.
There it is.
Right, I want to see everything that this person's ever done.
Yep. Bang,
and you can know the entire history of comedy in a week.
And if you told them what we went through, they'd never believe you.
Never believe.
Anyway. But there was something kind of exciting about that too, having to source it. Like, there's a Richard Pryor VHS, and you take that home and you watch it, and it wasn't just like a flippant, I'll watch 10 minutes of that. Like, you were invested in it, in what you found, like an old Billy Connolly. I remember live at the Albert Hall, and putting that in and watching that and being and watching it over and over, sort of being methodical with what is he doing here. For me, I don't know, maybe that's what people do on YouTube today, watch it over and over. But I just remember just getting your hands on something was so important. It was and Jonathan sent me because I became like an obsessed fan And he sent me, it was his personal tape. It was on a show called Comic Strip Live, and he had like something like a record 24 appearances on it.
Right.
And so he sent me his personal compilation of all of that from the States, and it was on NTSC, and I had to go and find out how to source this to get a PAL copy of it. And he's like, just give it to me next time I'm on tour in Australia. And so, and just watching that was just like, it was like this, the Holy Grail, finding that. And so for you, though, because your style is like, clearly develop your own voice and style. Like, what was, like, was there someone that you were influenced by initially to go off on that? Like,
well weirdly, I always think, like, I had this thing where I used to watch people like Jack D, he's the grumpy guy. Yeah. I used to watch people like, the people at the time, like Lee Evans, for example.
Yeah.
He's the manic. He's
a lot of physical comedy.
And we all do that thing, like when you first start out, you try on different jackets and stuff, and it's that thing of you sort of, you can really sort of see people's influences early on. And I had this weird thing where I just went, I remember thinking, like, I just had this thing where I was thinking, trying different things, and I just thought, like, I'll just be like, I just won't have a style. I'll just be one of those sort of generic kind of bland, I won't have like a I'll just like
be nondescript.
I'll just be nondescript. I'll just be myself.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't until people started going, such and such is basically doing you. And I go, well, how can you do me? That's not and then you'd see stuff and you start, and people would point things out and you'd go, oh yeah, this is, and then when other people would then comment on what I was doing, and I'd go, all right, no, actually I've got this thing. You know what I mean? So it's this weird thing of like, you go, all right, that's, and it's so obvious. It's almost like a Yoda-y thing, where you sort of go, stop trying to, stop trying to find it, and it will find you. It will happen, because whoever you are, you can't hide. It's like those reality TV shows, You see people go on them shows, and they're like, after like an hour, they just get tired, and it's like that's them. That's who they are,
Yeah.
So, but no, I actually have. It's funny because a friend of mine came to see me live, and he hadn't seen me live before, and we were talking about. So basically, I've got a lot of my influences, really obvious influences, are. Which quite blatantly stolen is do you know Max Miller?
No.
So there's an old music hall comedian called Max Miller. He's the cheeky chappy. Yeah, listen, lady, right now. The Fast Show did a sketch.
Yeah, hello. Arthur Atkinson.
Yeah.
I saw you wearing your brother's clothing.
Yeah, exactly. Mr. Landy down walking around in the.
I saw you buying leather instead of lamb.
And everyone laughed. Well, that is basically that is a direct parody of Max Miller.
Right. Because I often wondered on that. Have you seen me washboard?
Yeah, where's me washboard? And if you watch old footage of him, he'll say,
I got to track that down.
Oh, it's great. But he's genuinely funny. Yeah. Like he's like hilarious. And he does this joke about a woman who she's got this chihuahua, and it's shedding its hair everywhere. So she decides that she's going to get some hair removal cream, and she's going to smear it all over the chihuahua. It's quite surreal, And he smear it all over it, and then that way the hair will fall out, and she'll be fine. She goes to the chemist, and he goes, now listen, lady, right? This lady, she goes into the chemist, she says to the fella, she's on some hair removal cream. He says, well, listen, here's what you got to do, right? You got to take the cream, but only use it. He says, get quite a lot of it, and put it on your top lip, and leave it on there for at least an hour, then wash it off, you'll be fine. She said, no, it's not for me top lip, it's for me little chihuahua. I said, well, in that case, don't use it sparingly and don't ride your bike for a week. Now, listen here, and it's like that, And he used to do, the term, like, a blue comedian, that comes from Max Miller. So, like, he would have two books. He would have like the white book and the blue book, and he had this like sort of. He used to wear this long sort of silk coat. He'd walk on. He'd go, "Here, oh no, settle down now. Listen here. Now I'm a commercial traveller and I'm ready for bed. Now, come on." And he would do this thing where he'd look off into the wings.
Yeah.
And he'd like that, like, "Here, no, don't laugh. You get me in trouble. Now, here." And he'd look like the theatre manager was at the side of the stage, was going to...
Waiting with the hook.
Yeah. And he'd be like, "Here, listen, this woman, right? Now, listen. No, he's all right. Right." And it was all of this business, and it was all very conspiratorial. And he's like looking off into the wings, and he would do like... he said, "I'll do one from the blue book, one from the white book," you know. So he would go to the white book, and it would be like... and he'd go, "I'll do the start of the poem from the white book. Mary had a little lamb. She also had a bear. I've often seen her," and then he'd go to the other book. "I've often seen a little lamb. I've never seen it. Here, now, you get me in trouble. Now, stop it." And he would sort of blame the audience for that. Yeah. Always looking into the wings. And he would say things like, there's this one, he's on one of his recordings, he just goes, out of nowhere, he just turns around to the audience and he goes, "Here, I'm an Arab. I'm in anyone's tent tonight now." And they go, "Ah." And that's where the fast show got the idea. Because some of the stuff is so of its time.
Yes.
The audience are rolling about laughing, and you're going, why are they laughing at it? And it's obviously like cultural references and what have you. But yeah, like Max Miller, the cheeky chappie they call him, and he was the king of the music hall. And his recordings, they still hold up, apart from the bits that you just go, "I don't get that." So there's people like him. There's loads of old sort of loads of old music hall and people that you wouldn't associate with what I do at all, who I love, and you know, I throw in, you know, all these like kind of like Frankie Howard. Frankie Howard was heavily influenced by Max Miller.
Right.
And I, you know, heavily influenced by Frankie Howard, and you know, the same thing. No, don't. Right, you said, and all of this was it. And so so there's loads of, and so I'm probably influenced by a lot of stuff which you wouldn't necessarily link to the style of comedy I do.
Sure. But in terms of the just the freestyling that you do,
yes,
you know, the mental freestyle that you do, the riffs that you go on stage, like I haven't seen someone do it to that extent, where they can make a whole show around just, you know, it's off stuff, off the cuff, and it's beyond, like, you know, like you see like theatre sports and they use all the techniques of shelving and all of that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like you can see the mechanics in it. You know, you can see the sort of blueprint for what they're doing. Whereas when watching you, it's like you don't see the blueprint.
But they do that thing. The theatre sports thing as well is they set the stall out where they go, "Give me a thing, give me a thing, give me a thing," and this is and they go, this is the framework that we're gonna do, and these are the things that we're gonna use to fit into this. They say this is what we're gonna do. Now give us the thing to allow us to do it.
Yeah.
And it's sort of, in a way, like I try and, if somebody's coming to my show, you're just watching a stand-up show, that's what you're coming for. Like, I don't want somebody in a review going on about how it's done.
Yeah.
It's that thing of like, it's just come to the show and it'll be whatever I decide it
will be.
Yeah. And so, because I think the problem is that sometimes there's a danger that people, it's the same way that like, sometimes you can do a thing and people sit there and go, if people are sitting in the audience going, "Oh, that's very clever," you've failed.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If like, essentially it's just a bloke doing stand-up and just kind of mucking about and playing. And as soon as people are sat there and they're going, "Oh, but hang on, but that person there," and then that's
they're trying to deconstruct
and it's just sort of thing of like, as soon as that's the case, it's like people who go in, like, and I'm not saying it's like a magic trick, but it's like people that, you know, like Penn and Teller, you know, Penn talks about that thing of everything we do tonight, we're not trying to fool you, you know, we're saying, look, just come along and just enjoy this.
Sure.
And the people that go along to a show and sit there going, well, that must be yeah, you might be right, you might not be right, but it gets in the way of the thing. But
which is the age-old magician trick of going, well, I'm showing you how it's done. Meanwhile, the big reveal's coming on the end where they flip it around.
Yes.
Like, oh, that's how I thought it was done, but now it's
Yeah, exactly.
Now they really got one over me.
And then so it's.
But with what you're doing though, it's like you could understand the mechanics but still to be able to do it is a whole nother story. It's like jazz. It's like creating. It is. It's like it's like.
It just sounds incredibly British.
Yeah. Okay. But it is like watching the other night because I was watching. But I was watching thinking, man, the fact that like you're just improvising these, and of course you've done it so well for so many years. So it's like you know the ins and outs of what you're doing. But just watching it from a comedian's perspective, watching that, like we've spoken about before, where like you go on you get on a roll, improvising with something in the audience, but. To continue that over that amount of time, I'm talking about a short period of time for most comics to do it for that amount of time, and also too, I was after the other night watching your show thinking, what if you're just in a funk, you're in a bad mood, or you're feeling ill, or something. You can't get up like most comics, and you can power through that because you've got the material set. You can navigate your way through what you're going to be talking about. But with you, it's so. If your mind's not there or you're not in a funk, that's the whole show.
But actually, that's usually. But again, that's that thing of if something, the energy thing, like you say, if you're in a funk, weirdly, that's the point for me where I need to be more like. It forces you to be
more on the money,
more on the and actually sometimes when you just feel absolutely brilliant, I get nights sometimes where I just feel incredible. Like the other night I just did this crazy run thing, and I came back and I finished this event at about like lunchtime or whatever. And then I had enough time that the endorphins of doing all this exercise had kicked in, and I'd been out in the woods running about, and I just felt amazing. I turn up at the show, and I'm just like, I just feel incredible. I walk on stage like, oh, hey, and the audience are like, and they go, oh, hang on, oh God,
I'm not going to adjust.
No, I've got, I was just ready for. I just thought the audience are going to, of course, they're going to feel as great as I do. No, they don't. I don't know what's happened in their life.
Sure,
so actually, sometimes when you got to dig deep and you sort of go, oh, if you had really bad news or whatever, and I'm sure psychologists will tell you it's not a good thing to do, but you just park that, and I've come up with this sort of the theory of happiness, if you like, right? Everything, and it's like you can be as highfalutin as you want, and you get all these like gurus and they say, the higher consciousness and all of this stuff, and you can sort of start deconstructing like art and performance and all these things. I honestly think it all comes down to playing. That is the secret. It's the secret to happiness, secret to like anything. If you can turn every single thing, if it's just about it's just about turning everything into play. Yeah. Then
no, it's so true.
That's
because we do. I don't know why, but we do want to get in our heads and try and deconstruct everything and overanalyze. And there was someone that taught. It was, I forget, one of the great actors saying, actors they're always in their head. They're always trying to. He said, no, it's in the body. And at the end of the day, you just gotta have fun with it. He goes, "What do you think it's called a play? That's what That's what you're meant to do. You can, and also too, you can overthink stuff and psych yourself too much into stuff. Like I remember once doing a gig with a friend, like you're talking about before going on stage, and he'd done the Tony Robbins course, and he had his power move, and he would do his power move before going on, but then. after we were talking about it some time after that, and he said, yeah, I'm doing this power move, but then I thought, why am I doing that? Because I'm like pumping myself up, but then going out on stage and the audience is here, I'm here. It's like this miss, you know? It gets back to what you were saying. Like you go on thinking, and the audience is like, huh?
Yeah. Or do you go the other way and you just try and... Well, it's that thing as well of like the more relaxed you are, the more energy you put out.
Yeah, there's funny you said about relaxing. I think that's such an important thing. Bill Murray, I saw in an interview once, he said, you got to relax. He goes, once you're relaxed, that enables you to go to places that you normally wouldn't if you're stifled, if you're too tense or too... It just opens you up to more... And I think in life in general too, when you're relaxed with stuff, it's just... You can connect better with people. You can,
completely, and you don't die early.
Yeah.
Did you ever?
There's medical benefits to it.
Did you ever see that interview that Bill Murray did during COVID with Ellen DeGeneres?
No.
Oh, it was great. Yeah, Google that. It's so good. Yeah. He is literally just like he's like kind of Bill Murray with all the dials turned up, you know.
Yeah.
I heard this brilliant story. I'd love this to be true. I heard that he walks around New York and he walks past people eating in an outdoor cafe and he goes up and he just walks up to them and he takes some food off their plate, or like he takes a chip, eats it and goes, "They'll never believe you," and just walks off like that.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Yeah.
And apparently he did another thing where apparently he just walked up behind somebody, put his hands over their eyes, and went, "Guess who?"
Yeah, it's great. I love hearing those stories about. Yeah, you hear all this stuff like you'll go and join in on a soccer match in a park with people.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Bill Murray.
Yeah.
There was one that I heard about this guy. They were at a concert. And he said, my friend went up and said, "Can I get a photo with you, Bill?" And he just turned around and goes, No. You look just like Mark Chapman. And backed off and walked away. I was like, my friend's skinny. He looks nothing like Mark Chapman. But I thought, what a great way of saying, no, I don't want to have a photo.
Yes.
Like you give them that story.
Yeah. Because Steve Martin used to have those cards as well.
That's
great.
Give him a guy. He was courteous, kind.
This is to certify that. ...
Yeah. It's a great way of doing it.
Yeah.
So... The idea with this podcast, right, is I invite my guests to bring on their favorite album, book, film, and get an insight into my guests to the things that they love. And today you've brought along a few things. You've brought along your favorite album, which is...
It's Automatic for the People by
R.E.M. Great selection.
And I'm glad you think so, because I did think that this might be a bit... well, the thing is, when you're choosing... when you're choosing these things, you sort of... You've got two options. You can try and pick things to make yourself look cool.
Yeah.
And, or profound. Or you can pick stuff that actually sort of genuinely...
resonates.
And I think this is, isn't this the greatest album ever made?
It's
probably not.
Well, it is a great album though.
It is a great album.
I remember when I was 14, I got it for my birthday on my 14th.
Did you?
Yeah.
Right.
And I remember listening to it, just blown away by it. And the thing that I really resonate, because it is a kind of melancholic, kind of album, but it doesn't get you down in the dumps when listening to it.
Yes, and that's the thing. I've never really been a fan of, I've never been an angst-ridden person, and I don't feel like this album is it's not an angsty album.
No,
it's actually it's very sweet. It's very relaxing.
You feel cradled with a lot of it, rather than it being a very
it doesn't wallow in misery. It's very upbeat. It's celebrating beauty in a way, I suppose. Yeah.
But I always felt with this album, from a sense of despair or longing or loneliness. From that, I've always felt it's based. That's the foundation to a lot of the lyrics in these songs. But from that, you're uplifted from it.
Yes.
the obvious one is Everybody Hurts with that song. It's like, it's talking about suicide. You're at the end of your end of your wick. You're gonna. But,
I never thought of that.
But you're not.
Right, you're right. It is.
But you're not alone. We all feel down at times. We all feel, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel at times. But from that, there's a sense of unity and an uplifting kind of response to it. That's what I felt.
And also, Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight that's a great, very upbeat. Yes. And that's an interesting one because that song will be known to most people as, so there's a singer and from, the band Bucks Fizz.
No.
So there's a band called For Making Your Mind Up, from they had a Eurovision. They were Eurovision winners.
Right. Okay.
You gotta speed it up, and then you gotta slow it down.
No. What was their name?
And they were called Bucks Fizz. They won Eurovision.
Okay. All right.
And they had long skirts on. 2 women, 2 men.
Yeah.
Long skirts on, and then they would grab the skirts and they would spin, and then they had mini skirts underneath. Right. And when I tell you this will ruin this album for you.
Right.
And in the UK, so there was the one of the women from Bucks Fizz was, she went on to be a children's TV presenter, and she presented the Guinness Book of World Records show, Record Breakers.
Right.
And her name is Cheryl Baker, right?
Right.
And the Sidewinder Sleeps Tonight in the UK, everywhere else in the world, it's just a regular song. But in the UK, when he sings the chorus, everyone in the UK, or most people in the UK, hear, calling Cheryl Baker, calling Cheryl Baker, calling Cheryl Baker. So that's the
synonymous with Cheryl.
And actually, probably, so Monster. The album Monster, which I thought was...
What's the Frequency, Kenneth? I remember that. Yeah,
that's right. Monster, which they did, because all this was all mandolins and all that kind of carry on. They went, right, we're going to go rock. Mm-hmm. And it's probably not as good an album. It's still great. Mm-hmm. But that album, I probably played that. So I remember, What's the Frequency, Kenneth? I had that album on cassette, and when I passed my driving test, I used to listen to that over and over again. So I probably listened to that album more than this. But this is just one of those albums where this was a sort of, because Nevermind came out around the same time, and you could arguably Nevermind was cooler than this, but this album was the album that I just when I got my very first Sony Discman.
Yeah.
This was the first sort of CD.
Right.
So I used to listen to this all the time. So this was the soundtrack.
Yeah.
The CDs was quite expensive at the time.
And having a Discman was you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
You got a
so walking around like this, trying not to let it skip.
Yeah.
So that's what this, and also, the fact that Man on the Moon.
Yeah, the Andy Kaufman.
Yeah, and this, and obviously that's then he went on to produce the film.
The film, Milos Forman.
Yeah, which he also, because I've never met Michael Stipe. I stood next to him once. I did a Glastonbury. There was a Glastonbury. They would interview people.
Yeah.
And I'd been in doing it, and then I came out, and there was Michael Stipe, and he was about to go in. And we sort of hey, as we passed, but I thought, do I hang around because I really like to meet him, Yeah. And he just sort of he's one of those people who, I'm sort of fascinated by stuff. I love the way he moves, he's just got that, there's this beautiful sort of fluidity to him, but a jerkiness as well. He's sort of jerky and fluid at the same time. And as a front man, and when he went through that phase of where he had
the blue stripe over the eyes,
sort of so I've never actually met him, but the fact that we just sort of passed, and he kind of went, hey, like that, and he just sort of, and this might have been just me inventing this in my head, but it seemed like he was just floating. He just had this sort of, those people that just had that sort of aura, and so I think but he produced because he was producing quite a lot of films, and he produced that film Velvet Goldmine. Did you ever see that?
With Christian Bale and
and Ewan McGregor was in it.
like,
Eddie Izzard was in it.
Was it like loosely based on the kind of
sort of Bowie? Yes, glam.
Bowie, Bowie
Iggy
and
Pop,
Iggy, yeah.
And they filmed, some of it was filmed in a pub called the Bedford, which is the Ball and Banana Comedy Club in London.
Oh, right.
And it's a sort of a big round room. They're doing a bit of filming down there, and there's a comedian who plays there a lot, who knew the barman, and said, "Oh, if Michael Stipe turns up, tell me, I'm going to come down." And John Maloney, so John tells this great story where he said the guy that run the bar didn't know what Stipe looked like at all. And he said, "What's he like?" Yeah, well, "Oh, you'll know. Yeah. If there's a bald guy there, and he's kind of," and he said, "All right, yeah." He said, "Well, I don't know who he is, but if I think he's here, I'll find out what he looks like in it." So anyway, he comes down, and he rings him up. He says, "I think that Michael Stipe's here," and so he goes down to the pub and he lets him in. And he's looking around, and the barman genuinely said, has no idea who Michael Stipe is. He go, "That's him in the corner." That's him in the corner. And ironically, the Bedford's a round room, so it sort of wasn't. But yeah, like I think REM have just got. I just love this whole, around this whole time, because obviously, like with the whole grunge thing, like Nirvana sort of came along, and there wasn't many bands. Like everything before that seemed, obviously like Nirvana picked up where the sort of punk thing, they were an extension of punk, but I think a lot of bands at this time, and this was sort of, and just that sort of pre-Britpop, like in the UK.
Yeah.
I think REM are one of those bands that sort of, they produced this, was just, just like incredible mandolins and acoustic-y stuff hidden in amongst all of the, for them to sort of, around that time, they just sort of...
Whole different direction.
But just kept it interesting and sort of, and weathered that storm, which which a lot of bands of that time just overnight just seemed like dinosaurs,
Yeah.
So
like a track like Night Swimming, like you put it in the context of that time, and that track, it's just like, it has a sort of transcendent kind of feel to it.
Yeah.
Very different, as you said, to the landscape.
MTV at the time, the fact that Everybody Hurts, which was Scott, Jake Scott, the Tony Scott's son. Directed the video, like through the
through the freeway and getting out of the cars and
and at that time, like I was sort of like I used to watch MTV because and it was at that time, like with people like there was that whole like Michelle Gondry and Spike Jonze and that whole that sort of whole generation of music video directors who it was just this, it was like the height of the art form. And you'd watch, and REM were, they were, their videos on MTV, the music was great, but their videos were brilliant as well, and I think that's and now you sort of, and I know this is just me as an old man going, it's not what it used to be. But, now it's just somebody in a shiny box going like this. And you sort of go, you used to get, like Everybody Hurts. It was just loads of sad people like in almost like, that film Falling Down, through the, camera moves and stuff. And, it's sort of... still get great videos now, but at that time, to be able to turn on MTV and see these sort of works of art, and it was mainstream stuff, these beautiful things. So yeah, that's.
Yeah, I was, like I said, I was glad when I saw that you picked that one because, and I hadn't listened to it. Last year. I hadn't listened to this album in a long. I listened to it a lot when I was younger.
Yes.
And I hadn't listened to it in a long time. Last year I was on. You know when you're doing those long, lonely drives. I'm driving like from Tamworth back to Sydney. It's like a 7-hour drive.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I'm gonna put this on and just put it on Spotify and listen to it. And it just like these waves of emotion came over me that sort of took me back to the 90s and that mindset that I was in when I was younger too, listening to these songs. It was like the song about Montgomery Cliff, Monty got a raw deal, and it just brought back all of those memories of like, because from that it's like, I gotta look into this Monty guy, and then I watched Montgomery Cliff films. I'm like, this guy is the best. Like his acting was just unbelievable.
Well, that's the thing as well. Like you mentioned, like What's the Frequency, Kenneth? And the story behind that about the guy that thought he was receiving messages through his teeth, and it was a newsreader. And I think he got stabbed, and it's like so all of the like you and the man on the moon and all that. You go through all these. There's stories behind all of these.
Yes.
It's not just like
If you want to dig a little, then for me that's always my favorite music too. Where on the surface you can really appreciate it, but you want to dig a little. There's so much more to get into. Underneath.
This is sort of this sort of thing.
I remember that on the inside of the CD cover, that those images.
This, you see, all of this, like when DVDs were a thing, I used to, like, when I would release DVDs, I would always release them in cardboard box covers.
Yes.
And then
have the, open it up and have the artwork
and fold out stuff and pictures and like all that sort of, because I used to really, I just remember getting, even on a CD, even just that, you just look at it and you go, like this, there's a picture there like that with it's just them.
It's like a Reservoir Dogs kind of
walking down. Walking down the street and you sort of go, But it was named after, it was Automatic for the People. It was it was the slogan of like a diet, one of these places where you go in and you put your coins in and it releases the food.
Oh, right.
It was a business. It was like
a truck stop kind of.
I think so. I've never been to one, but does it say on here like? Oh yeah, here you go. Right, Automatic for the People. Wow, this has literally been years since I read. Automatic for the People is the motto and service mark of Weaver D's Delicious Fine Foods in Clark County, Georgia. A gracious thank you to Weaver D and his great establishment, Automatic. There you go.
So you would have read that like 30 years ago or something, and then retain that. Yeah,
and just
great.
In my head, always gone, oh yeah, that's the, So, great album. There you go.
Oh, appreciate the insight into that. Now, moving on to the next
thing.
The next thing. Yes. Your favorite film.
Yes.
Now, once again, when I was a kid, I loved this film. None other than
Gremlins. Again, it's one of those things where I know everyone picks. They'll pick like
Battleship
a
Bergman film.
Yeah,
or,
exactly. But I think this film probably sort of has been probably the most influential. Obviously Star Wars, obviously Raiders of the Lost Ark,
yes,
Back to the Future. Back to the Future. It's a real tough one.
But you got a good crossover between that and Back to the Future because the town square with the courthouse is the same.
Exactly.
Set on the Universal backlight. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And I always love watching that in films, when noticing that, or in TV shows, noticing that clock tower.
Yes.
It's
the Gilmore Girls as well. It was shot there. Like Back to the Future. So we didn't have. we didn't have a VCR player. My dad used to have to bring one home from work on a Friday.
Right.
So
Friday night was movie night?
Yeah, the whole weekend was movie night.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And so we probably watched Back to the Future. I've probably seen that film at least 300 times.
Yeah.
So that was nearly at the top. But actually, Gremlins is and even like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah. I went to a wedding when I was a kid, and my mum made my sister a bridesmaid's dress. So I asked if I could go as Indiana Jones, and she said no because it's a wedding. But for the evening do, she made me a white tuxedo, like a little mini, white tuxedo with a red carnation, like when he's which you know the name of the bar where she's singing when she does Anything Goes is called Club Obi-Wan.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
so all
great.
of these films
That's
kind
nice
of link together. In fact, there was the opening of one of my shows. I wrote this song. It was like a song and dance number, telling people to turn off their phones. And my instruction for the costumes were they've got to be that sort of like showgirl, a bit like the start of Temple of Doom.
Yeah.
And anyway, we went to Angels, which is the big costume place, and Peter, who was getting the costumes, found these costumes and went, "Oh, these are perfect." Sent me a picture and went, "These." I went, "Hang on a second," and we cross-referenced. Sure enough,
no way,
they were the original costumes. Wow. The original costumes used in Temple of Doom.
That's fantastic.
And they're still there on a rack. Just literally, if you want, they're not for the public. It has to be a production.
Professional.
But sure enough, they're still there on the rack.
That's brilliant.
And but anyway, so Gremlins is the film that's probably been most sort of influential on me.
Well, the thing with Gremlins, it draws from so many things, and your humor does, it draws from so many different references in culture, in the world, in history, So I can see that. I can see that crossover.
And actually, I mean, people forget that it's a Christmas film.
Yes.
Like even on the cover, it's not. There's no reference to, apart from the fact it's a box. It's not even got Christmas wrapping on it.
No.
So
and shot in the middle of summer.
Yes.
So they're all sweating in their parkas
and you've got sort of that brilliant scene. It's one of my favourite films when she's talking about the reason she hates Christmas and the dad dressing up and getting stuck in the chimney.
Broke his neck.
And he was in there dressed as Santa, and it's perfect. It's just like the darkness that's involved.
Yeah.
And also the film written by Chris Columbus, who then went on to direct Mrs. Doubtfire, the
Home Alone,
first Harry Potter film,
Yeah.
So and he
Bicentennial Man.
Who could forget?
Come on.
Yes. So it's sort of and also the fact that it's it's PG, but there's still
there's some heavy stuff in there. Yeah. Well, I understand when Chris Columbus originally wrote it was a lot more like the mother got beheaded by one of the gremlins.
Right.
And Spielberg's like, look, I love this, but we got to pull it in a bit for a family audience, and which only improved, I think, the film.
The stripe,
with the mohawk.
Terrifying.
Yeah,
for kids.
Speaking of crossbows.
Yes.
Yes.
100%. Like the fact that a crossbow in a film, a kid's film, but also the microwave, the gremlin exploding in the microwave.
And the grinder.
The grinding and the legs flying around.
It's carnage.
Yeah. That is creatures being. That's again. It's cartoon violence, but it's because it's a sort of a scaly reptile creature, you
Go
sort
ahead.
of go,
Yeah. Do what you need to do. Burn down a whole cinema full of them.
Exactly, exactly. And as a kid, I sorry, somebody's whistling outside. I will not stand.
I'm glad we closed the door.
I'm not standing for whistling. And so as a kid, I was like, it was like you say, it draws on all those like horror films.
But all the cultural references, it's so dense with so many, like the Sinatra character, he's got the thing sitting at the thing, at the jazz, the other one, the girl in like the 20s thing, and they're dealing the cards and he shoots him, and there's so many different like cultural references that these gremlins encapsulate.
And again, the fact that like, Spielberg, it's like Spielberg's just got that, he's just running through all of these. He's just this constant presence through all the greatest things ever made.
Yeah.
Like,
and what a year too, 1984. Like the quality of films that came out that year with Ghostbusters.
Yes.
Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones. Right. Beverly Hills Cop came out that year. Gremlins. So it was like the golden age of 80s films. Around 84, I think that was. And
I think as well that was the perfect age. That was so I was born in 76, so it's that thing of like like sort of what's it 84 was it? Yeah. So sort of 7 turning 8 in that summer. That's like that's just the point where. Like the fact that all of those things are just hitting at that point. I got my my grandma and granddad got me a little bendy stripe, about that big. For Christmas, and it was my favorite thing. I just played with it all Christmas. It was just like it was the coolest thing because you bend its arms and all that sort of stuff. And then,
have you ever thought of getting one of the? Because I've seen that they make replicas of life-size. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got that.
You've got it.
Yeah. So what happened? So what happened was I slowly bought all the. I started buying because when I was a kid, I was like, my cousin used to get all the toys, and it was like whatever he wanted and that. And my mum and dad didn't really buy us plastic toys. It was always from I got an ET from my grandma and granddad. It was all of the
ET that you had. Was that the spongy kind of one? Or
pulled it and it would go ET.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
nice.
So I started collecting toys for a long time, and then my house burned down and I lost my toy collection.
Oh no!
So I didn't want to replace. Something because I'd become a bit of a collector. I thought I don't want to be like, I was free from sort of collecting stuff. Yeah. But the one thing that I just thought, I've got it. So I re-bought the same little bendy stripe that my gran got me.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, I'll have that. And then while I was online, I went, oh, there's one in its original box, or I'll get that. And then and now I've got pretty much all the original Gremlins toys. So I've got like Gizmo in the pink car.
Oh, you do, yeah.
In the box,
yeah.
I've got the full-size posable stripe, and then when they released the Gizmo and the stripe,
the life size,
from the original mold.
Yeah.
I just went, yep. So I've got in my room that I laughingly call an office.
Yeah.
That's my office in there. But it's full of Gremlins.
Oh, that's great.
So when I was, I've also got an Indiana Jones hat and the idol that he grabs off the thing. Mm-hmm. Got one of them, and I stand and play. I've got an Indiana Jones pinball machine, and I wear my Indiana Jones hat and I play Indiana Jones. But so I'm sort of. So at home, when I'm sitting in my big beanbag staring off into space, I'm surrounded by surrounded by a lot of Gremlins.
I totally get it. Like I'm such a sucker for toys from my childhood that I remember that I don't have anymore.
Yes.
and also it's called like propstore.com, I think, when they have movie memorabilia.
Yeah.
And just last year they had one of the original gizmos with all the cables coming out of it that they were auctioning off.
Oh my God.
And I remember going, and he was like the featured thing for the auction. So I remember looking at it going, wow, this is like, how would that be to have one of the original?
How much did it go for?
I can't remember. I remember looking at it when it was before it was auctioned.
Yeah.
I'll go back and have a look. I'll let you know. But I think it went for
A lot of money.
Yeah.
Because there was an auction. Robin Williams's wife auctioned off a load of his stuff,
Right.
and I bought. So I've got an original. I've got a picture of Laurel and Hardy, signed Laurel and Hardy autograph picture.
Great.
That used to belong to Robin Williams.
Yeah, great.
So that's like,
Yes.
you look at it and you go, oh, there's an autograph. There's an autograph of Laurel and Hardy. You go, yeah, but that used to be.
There's more to this.
Yeah. I bought you know that film Battlefield Earth?
Yeah. But wasn't it L. Ron Hubbard?
Yeah,
didn't he
terrible.
write? Yeah.
Absolutely one of the worst films ever made.
Yeah.
But
John Travolta.
John Travolta, yeah. And they all the characters, and they got these big. They had these giant boots that were on stilts, and so I've got an original costume from Battlefield in my room is a little bit. People walk in and they go, "Whoa, this is like."
No, I totally get it. I want to buy this. There's a guy. Well, for this, I made this short film about Batman,
Right.
and I had the cowl, the mask that I
Yes.
have for it is made from the original Michael Keaton '89 mold.
Oh, right.
And it's but this guy has continued, and this is a guy that the Ironside Productions who remake the suits because they're made out of this kind of latex foam that's deteriorated
Yes,
over 40 years or whatever. So they've come back and basically they scanned the whole suit and remade the whole thing and ground down the original suit and put it into the new one basically.
Ah, right.
But they went to this guy to find out information about remaking this suit. So this guy Sean Reeves in the States, he makes the original '89 suit from the original molds, the whole suit.
Wow.
And I'm like, I'm so tempted to want to get it, but then I'm like, where am I going to put this? And I
just have a room in your house where you just put all of the crap.
Yeah.
And then, the door is closed. And then it isn't
You
until...
just sit there. But I totally get that, having been surrounded by that stuff.
Yeah.
It's
I've got it. I made this short film where it had a monster in it. And I got this guy, Christian Mallet, who's just this like insanely brilliant special effects guy. And he made me this... so he made me this monster, and it's got these like crazy teeth, and he did all the makeup on all the veins and everything. And afterwards, he gave me, like, we had two of them, and he took it off the stuntman and he put it on the thing. And he sort of gave me this. He said, "Well, it's yours." So I've got it in the corner, just sitting there. And then but my wife was like, certainly when the kids were younger, it was just that thing of like, you can't have that on display. What if her friends come in and look at us and we don't come in my room?
What are they doing in my office?
But what I was going to say was, it wasn't just me boasting about me Robin Williams thing. In that auction, in the Robin Williams auction, so there was things like she was auctioning off like his Golden Globes and all of these things.
Oh, wow.
But the thing that went for crazy money was in Good Will Hunting. The painting that he's got on the wall
In his office.
Yeah, the paint by numbers thing that his wife did, and Matt Damon says
comments on,
and it's just shit, and he pins on them. That picture was originally, so the one that was in the movie was actually painted by Gus Van Sant himself, and he'd done the picture and put it on the wall. And it had a reserve price. It was like $1,500, $2,000 or something. And I looked at it and I went, that's a pretty cool bit of memorabilia because it's the actual thing. And the bidding starter on it, and it just went. It was insane. It went for like 80 grand or something.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Like 800 grand. It's just like through the roof for this look. But it's in the movie. It was done by him. then Robin Williams had owned it, and then so yeah, some things you just think, some stuff it just catches fire and on the right day, and then it just it goes. But yeah, it's just I just like having. I just like having gremlins all around, all around the walls, just looking at me. So, but yeah, and it's one of those films where I just never tire of watching every time.
And it does hold up. Like Back to the Future holds up. I watched that like a year and a half ago. I'm like, I'm loving this as much as I did like when I first saw it. It's like. That was actually the first, Back to the Future was the first VHS tape I ever bought when I was a kid.
Right.
And this was before they would like sell it in stores.
Yes.
So I went to the store and I said, I want to buy one. And it was expensive, but I saved up all of my money. He said, well, they're all out tonight. You'll have to come back. And it was a Saturday morning, and we had to, as a family, had to take off that day. But I said to my dad, I have to go and get this thing. And I remember there was like a director's chair, a high director's chair next to the counter. Every person that returned the table, be that? No. No.
Oh, that's great.
And then I eventually got it, and I wore that thing out. It was when you can own a film and you can watch it as much as you want.
But that was mad, wasn't it? Because like back then, the ones in the video shows, they were like, I remember 75 pounds, and you were like, what, to own this thing? It's like,
crazy.
But yeah, there's I was going to make another point about the other thing I was going to say about this, which is what makes it incredible, is the fact that the rules of the the rules of the Mogwai, the mythology of the Mogwai, which, by the way, Mogwai is, it's Chinese for monster.
Right.
So that's, but yeah, the fact that it's, don't get them wet, don't feed them after midnight. And the one thing that I've never, because the always thing that I used to think was like, is it once it gets dark, then it's like you don't feed them after midnight, but then once the sun comes up,
is it like a vampire-ish kind of thing?
Yeah, because there was never, and also
you didn't see him during
because I was slightly disappointed that Gremlins 2, the new batch, was, I thought.
Let me get that. That's the old relay backstage here.
I was slightly disappointed that Gremlins 2 didn't play around with time zones, because if you're transporting a Mogwai around the world, when do you?
When is it after midnight?
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Midnight,
yes.
like if you.
Yeah, the time's difference.
Yeah,
because it isn't the second one in New York.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's where. Is it New York or is it Chicago?
I'm not. I can't. Don't hold me to it. I'm not. I haven't seen the second one.
I must admit, I haven't watched the second one as much as I've watched.
There's talk of a third one for years. They've been talking about doing a third one, but who knows if that's going to happen.
Yeah, see again, Kathleen Kennedy.
Yes, Amblin. Amblin
Kathleen Kennedy, and also Kathleen Kennedy and Gail Ann Hurd. I reckon the two of them have probably been, in terms of producers,
responsible for some of our favourite films.
Yeah, exactly.
From the
Those
80s.
two people. Yeah. Great.
Well,
lovely.
That's once again another great selection. Yeah. Now, in terms of books, to finish on favourite books, sometimes people pick, maybe
Tolstoy.
Dostoevsky, Steinbeck, maybe.
Yeah.
But what we have here, another classic.
Yeah.
The SAS Survival Handbook.
SAS Survival Handbook, which this is by John Lofty Wiseman.
Yes.
I'm glad to see that you. Now this, see, look, multi-million seller.
Yeah. I remember this from my childhood.
This book had more, like, I know you're supposed to appear to be really smart and pick a, great work of literature. But this is the book that I've read more than anything else. And it's, Lofty Wiseman. Now, this is interesting because this isn't the original form. The original version of this that I had was it was a square book. It was much wider.
Right,
It wasn't like a traditional.
Yeah.
It wasn't a traditional book like that. So this isn't the exact. It had a white cover.
Yes.
And then and around the edges it had kind of
Symbols.
yeah, symbols around the outside. Yeah. And yeah, I just thought Lofty Wiseman was, in fact, like Lofty Wiseman was like the fact that he's called John Wiseman, but everyone always just called him Lofty.
Yeah.
But in our house, we would call him Lofty Wiseman, but I'm guessing nobody ever referred to him as Lofty Wiseman, because that's not his name. Lofty's his name. There's like, yeah, Lofty, John Wiseman. Oh, Lofty.
Yeah, Lofty.
Anyway, but to me, he's Lofty Wiseman.
Well, you're being respectful.
Yeah. And so, yeah, this book was the book that I just...
Because it's sorry.
No, go on.
It is full of like survival techniques when you're in the wild.
Yes.
My big question is: have you applied?
Yes. Yeah.
You have. You've applied this book in the wild.
I grew up in a new town. It was like sort of built in the 60s and the 70s, but we lived on the edge of farmland, and then there was some woods and stuff. So I spent a lot of time in the woods. And now, my favourite thing, this is the first time I found out about a blue-ringed octopus. Mm-hmm. Like, I think, did they still have the same pictures? Oh, and, which I've literally just remembered, where's here we go. So poisonous plants.
Poisonous plants, yeah. Different footprints of animals.
Tracking, footprints, yeah. Oh, yeah, here we go. Poisonous creatures. And yeah, like, just like poisonous stuff, you know, like as a kid you just go like, so yeah, you got all your dangerous...
scorpions
and... vampire bats. Like, so good. Like, you know, redbacks. That's why when I came to Australia, I was so happy, because a lot of these, I was hearing about things that I'd only read about in Lofty Wiseman's, you know, like all these, here we go. Dangerous sea creatures, right? This was one of my favourite. Now this here, right? So the blue-ringed octopus, right? Mm-hmm. There's your picture there. Now, I didn't realise they were literally that big. Right. So that
you thought like a massive...
That picture there, you think, oh my God, there's a giant yellow... so just in the puffer fish.
Yeah, the puffer fish.
The puffer fish, look at that, the stone-fishes, like just...
Eels.
Just brilliant. And the one thing that, I used it where there's bits in it where there's you know, it teaches you obviously all the different knots. So I just worked my way through this. We would like, you know, we would make camps. We would.
Did you ever make any of the underground sleeping, like where you put the bamboo and sticks over top, and you could go underground and have it like a little little hole?
No, we were told under no, because the problem is that you would. I never understood how that worked. See that one there?
Yes, I remember that one with the fire and the heating up the teepee.
Yes.
But it's like a dugout. But how are you meant to dig that out and create a fire underground?
But that's a cross section.
Yeah.
Where it continues. I always thought that would just fall into the fire because I'm an idiot. The one that used to. Because we started building like the monkey traps, you know, where you dig a hole in the ground and you have like a spike where it...
Yeah.
People find, and we were told to stop making those because somebody was going to get seriously injured.
Was that your parents telling you that?
Yes. Yeah.
So would you take them and show, look what I've created?
Oh, they'd see me. Sometimes I'd just be doing all this stuff in the back garden, you know. Okay. I wouldn't always... Because also as well, I wasn't allowed to... Because there was two things. So my granddad gave me like a blunt old knife, so that I could whittle things and make the little noduley bits that were. So I finally got a Swiss Army knife, but I wasn't really allowed to take the knife. I wasn't allowed to carry a knife around outside of the garden, you know.
Right.
So sometimes, but not. But they were a bit like, don't be. Just probably best not to be carrying a knife around with you.
But how am I going to whittle anything down? This is ridiculous.
Yeah, and I was only young, and then but this was the thing, right? This was the thing where my parents were like, "Oh God, what's happening here?" And I was only young. I was probably 11 when I got into this book, so they found out I was dyslexic when I was 11. So if I said I want a book, they'd go, yes, have a a book. So, and this was the thing where I would sit and just, I would sit and go through this book. So as far as they were concerned, they were just like,
fantastic,
brilliant.
yeah.
This is engaging them, right? But here's the thing that, right, so you got your survival kit there, right? And it's got, so I was, building up all this stuff, surgical blades, right? But look at this, number 15, condom, right? This makes a good water bag holding 1 litre. Alternatively, a plastic bag can be used. Fill it from a source that is an abundance of water and a degree of water pressure, like a waterfall, right? I'm like 11, right? And I go to my parents, I'm going to need a condom. What? Like all sorts of alarm bells.
How do you even know it? Lofty told me.
Yeah,
all right.
yeah. Who? John Lofty Wiseman? Yeah, and they were like, okay, what? And they were like, so that was like, what's going on? And then sure enough, I sort of went, yeah, look, it's in the... It's
look at that. It's on page 31 at the bottom of...
And it's for... it makes a good water bag and holds 1 litre of water. And so to be fair to them, they went, there you go.
Nice.
And I used it as a...
So they went,
And I
went down and put, what are you purchasing this for my son? 11-year-old.
He's 11. So the very first time I saw a condom or used it, opened it, saw what it was literally when my parents gave me it at 11 in order to, and I opened it up and filled it up with water to see how much water, and then I measured out the water to see how much it could hold for a survival situation.
Yeah.
And,
like, is this safe sex class? No, safe SAS class.
Exactly. And I will be having sex with a pufferfish. So yeah, it was, fair play to them. They just went, oh, okay.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those things where, like school, because I wasn't academically great.
Well, I had dyslexia. I was diagnosed too. I get what you're talking about in terms of, warming to a book like this.
These were the traps. These were the ones that were like, so you'd have a snare that would flip up.
It's like a catapult. Yeah.
And so look, it's one of those things where, when we were at school, it's like, right, you're going to do you get your books out and start reading. You sat there like that and you just sort of, and I'm just, I mean, look at that. That's like, it's a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
It all comes back to the crossbow. It's so it's essentially it's called a bow trap, and it says, warning, never leave this unattended where people could walk into it. It is a potential man killer. So
did you ever have a desire to go, I want to join the SAS?
Yes.
I want to. Yeah, you did.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. It was my I was all in for joining the SAS, and I just thought the idea of like living in the woods and then my dad
surviving and
and then my dad sort of pointed out, he went, you have to kill people, and I was kind of like, but you get to be outdoors and you get to tie knots and everything, and then the thing that put me off was basically like the idea of doing all this stuff as a job, which is amazing. I would have loved it. But the thing that put me off was the fact that, like, as my dad pointed out, it wasn't the fact that you might get shot at. Don't care. It's really dangerous. I don't care. He went, if you join the army, it's just people telling you what to do. Yeah. And I went, I can't have that. So it wasn't the fact that my dad put me off. It was literally the idea of it being like an extension of school, because I hated having to,
these are the rules, regimented.
These are the rules. This is what you do. This is what we expect of you. You will be tested. You have to achieve this.
And all that yelling too.
It's just a bit. But weirdly, if they'd had sort of like, I think now, if it had just been, the fact that there's a load of magazines and websites and stuff on out and out bushcraft. But again, I think if I was a kid, like that's what sort of puts me off about, Bear Grylls. I like Ray Mears and stuff, but like Bear Grylls, I mean, he's retired now anyway. But this thing of like, when you watch every single show Bear Grylls does, I know it's called the SS Survival Handbook. It's about surviving, but everything that Bear Grylls does, it's all about how dangerous everything is. He's just constantly talking it up. There's a danger here. This could happen. This could happen. And the thing that struck me about when I've seen interviews with Lofty Wiseman, like Bear Grylls seems like the most scared man on the planet. He just got every single show. If you're climbing up here, you've got to make sure because this could collapse. And I just think, you know what, Bear? It might not. Might be fine.
So what do you mean? You cross the road, a car could hit you.
He even did a show where it was about surviving urban
environments. Wow.
Like if you get chased by a dog, how to. I just thought like, and it might just be because he's a devout Christian and he's sort of like, he thinks Jesus is on his side, whatever. But like, I've never seen a human being who is. It's like, why are you terrifying kids? He's meant to be the chief scout.
Yes.
He's the head scout.
Yeah, they'll never go outdoors.
Yeah, you just go. Hey guys, this is the wilderness, and sure you can die, but here's how not to die. It's not like this could attack. Okay. I've got to rappel down here because if I don't, then I could die. It's like, stop doing he just feels like a man who is doing everything like he's just worried. The Bear Grylls seems worried, whereas I reckon Lofty Wiseman is the sort of guy who's just like, there'd be wolves all around and there'd be like pufferfish jumping out of the water. And I reckon
I can handle this.
I reckon Lofty would be there with his book just going like that. Boom, don't worry about these lads. It's all fine, So,
well, good thing Bear Grylls isn't attempting comedy these days. He'd be so fearful.
Could you imagine? But weirdly though, it's sort of like, all of those, all of those like kind of right-wing news, all those, or not even right,
fear-mongering.
People that sort of like, it's almost like an extension of, like, could your gas boiler kill you as you sleep?
Yeah.
Maybe, but
after
maybe,
this ad break.
Maybe not.
It's like, come on.
Like, let's hope
you'd never
not.
leave your house. Everything's possible.
Exactly, like murder's on the rise, and you go, but most people who are murdered are murdered by people that know them. It's very rare. It's very rare that somebody gets murdered by a stranger. So you know what? Just don't have that many friends. Like what, Anyway, but so
God, could you imagine being on a flight next to Bear Grylls?
Oh my God, just the whole time.
This thing could go down. Yes, we're fully aware of that, Bear. We're trying to watch this rerun of bloody Gremlins at the moment.
If the plane should crash, then should it crash? When it crashes, there's a light and a whistle. I've got my own. Of course you have. Calm down. But then maybe he's on there because he's Mr. Steered. Maybe he's on there and they just go, in the event of emergency, I'll be fine.
The big man upstairs will take care of me.
He'll sort me out. Yeah. Whereas you and Lofty will be burning in hell. But greatest book ever written.
Well, fearing death, that's what we do every night going on stage.
Exactly. It's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Which I know that we've both got to go and do very shortly.
We do,
so I appreciate you taking the time, Ross.
Thanks,
it's been a pleasure.
It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's been great revisiting.
I forgot that there was cameras on it.
Yeah.
So
that's a good sign.
If anyone's still watching this.
Well, thank you, my friend.
Thanks. Excellent. Should we turn this into a hut?
Yeah.